So right here I have the Xiaomi Mi Note 2, which is currently sitting in the shadow of the recently released Xiaomi Mi Mix. Now that's a concept phone, but this one here has more of a traditional design, has a curved display that looks very similar to the Note 7, but some very decent specs on paper. So let's have a look at it in greater detail. Now to quickly cover the specs, it's powered by Snapdragon 821. It has 4 to 6 gigabytes of RAM, 64 to 128 gigabytes of internal storage. That's UFS 2.0 spec. Unfortunately, you can't expand on that storage because there is no micro SD card support, which is a real shame. The battery capacity is 4070 milliamp hours. It has a fingerprint reader, a rear 22.5 megapixel camera from Sony, and a front-facing Sony autofocus 8 megapixel camera. Along the top here we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, secondary microphone, and an IR transmitter. On the bottom, a microphone, loudspeaker, and Type-C port, which supports Qualcomm Quick Charge 3.0, which allows you to charge your phone in 30 minutes up to around about 68%. On the left, the dual SIM tray, which takes 2 nano SIMs. Unfortunately, no micro SD card support. On the right side, metal volume up and power buttons. So on the front, we have hardware menu keys. They are backlit. The fingerprint reader, a front 8 megapixel camera, which has autofocus, the earpiece, ambient sensor, and just right here next to the earpiece is a status LED. And lastly, on the back of the Mi Note 2, we have the 22.5 megapixel camera with an f2.0 aperture, dual LED flash that is dual tone, and the Mi logo, which is the only place you'll find it. So overall, I'm pleased with the build quality here. It does feel every bit a premium device with the glass on there, the metal frame around the outside. The joins between the glass and the metal are really good, and easy access to the volume and power buttons. If one thing, it is a little slippery when your hands are cold and dry. But that happens with any glass-clad mobile phone. So the screen outdoors is perfectly viewable here in the shade. And now in direct sunlight, it's a little more difficult to make out, but I can still make calls on it. But the brightness is only a maximum of 540 lumens of brightness, which isn't the brightest 1080p screen. Now, one thing that does slightly bother me that has been hard to capture on camera here is I've noticed that it's not the sharpest 1080p panel. Now, on the right side of the screen, this is my Xiaomi Mi Max. This also has a 1080p panel, but it's stretched across an even larger 6.44 inches. I noticed that this panel, to me, looks better, looks sharper. Now, I wouldn't call it a deal breaker, the sharpness. I wouldn't say it's blurry. Just bear in mind that because of the pentile arrangement on the OLED panel that it has, that you're going to see jagged edges, no, but it just doesn't have that same sharpness. And it's more noticeable when you look at text and font here. Now looking at the colors, you can see that it has very deep blacks. That is one of the characteristics of the OLED panel. It's almost as black as a Samsung AMOLED panel. Matches almost, not quite, the bezel's blackness. And the colors look good on it too. I have looked at it in detail, but what concerns me a little bit is the color shifting that happens. So I'll show you now. This is very obvious when you get just a constant white image here. Now you can see on the right hand side edge that there's a blue tinge to it. And this is more obvious when I shift the angle of the panel to the side. You can see it's now gone from a neutral, almost warm white to cool white. So to quickly touch on the ROM it has, so it's running Android 6.0.1. Now the skin on top of this is Xiaomi's own. It's called MIUI and it is version 8. One thing I didn't like in the beginning was the fact that it doesn't have an apps drawer. So you've got widgets, this is a widget right here, and the apps all messed in there together. But you can create folders as well. It does also support things like double tap to wake. You can run dual apps. So if you wanted to run WhatsApp twice, 2 different phone numbers, that is possible to do that. I know other phones now can do that as well. And various different tweaks, like the menu system looks a little bit different, the way they have organized things. But if you're an Android user, then it won't take you too long to get accustomed to this. And you can of course install Apex or Nova Launcher if it really does bother you. Now one thing that does bother me is because I have the early first ROM, which is only Chinese and English, there's a lot of Chinese bloat on there in the beginning, and I managed to uninstall most of that, but some of it you can't really get rid of, like the Mi App Store and a few of these ones here. So if you want to be completely free of the bloat applications and also Chinese characters in the phone dialer and notifications, then you need to wait for the global ROM, which should be out within about 1 to 2 months after the time of this review. Now, having a look at benchmarks, I did run some of the ones I like to run on these mobile phones just to gauge how fast things are. First off, I'll start with the 4G speeds. These are excellent. You can see here they've got really, really good speeds. I did have maximum coverage at the time of this test. And also the internal memory and internal UFS storage, very fast speeds. I mean, this is almost like a SATA 3 drive. Now, I checked out the wireless range as well. Now, this was when I was downstairs where signal drops off, and I noticed that the drop wasn't as great as it can be on some devices, so really good range. And here was the test done downstairs, furthest away from my router, still very good speeds. And later on the same level as my wireless router, you see the signal is of course stronger and slightly better speeds, but almost really about the same. I've noticed that the Wi-Fi strength is really quite good. Now here is the Antutu 6.21 score. Very good score here, quite high. Now note that when I did take this benchmark, I had the Mi Note 2 powered off for about half an hour, turned it on straight away, first boot, and did this. That's how I got a high score. Now the Geekbench 4 scores. Again, a very decent score here. And onto battery life, one of the most important things in a mobile phone. So it does have a 4070 milliamp hour capacity battery, quite large. And I managed to get here, you can see almost 12 hours on the battery. This was running PC Mark with a display calibrated correctly to 200 lumens of brightness. So the screen on time when running this test, this was continuous use, is almost 9 hours. Real world use, you're looking about 6 hours, I would say. And you can see PC Mark, the main consumer there. And here is the PC Mark work battery life score of just over 10 hours. Very good score. Really good, actually. And as I mentioned, yeah, so real life use will probably be around 6 hour screen on time. Because remember, this test just runs continuously to drain the battery out. Now, how's the audio quality? I found that call quality is really good, nice and clear, and the receiving end also said that I sounded nice and clear too. Now, the 3.5mm headphone jack produces some really nice audio quality, very clean, clear audio. One thing I did notice though, that the volume probably isn't the loudest. I would like it just a margin higher, would have been a bit better there. I don't know why it is set a little lower, maybe so people don't damage their ears or something. But if you're going to be driving a huge headset, you're pretty much going to need all the volume you can get from it. But no, the quality is very decent. So let's have a listen to the loudspeaker now. The location of the loudspeaker is right here. This is where the microphone is, and that is the speaker. So hopefully you could hear from that the loudspeaker quality is quite good. I mean, it's loud. It's not the best loudspeaker I have heard. I know the front-firing dual loudspeakers on other mobiles are probably a lot better than this one, but I would rate this as being sufficient, decent. There's a tiny hint of bass in there as well, and I can definitely hear the ringtones when I receive a call. So I wanted to touch quickly on one of the settings here that's kind of hidden away in the menu system, and that's under sound. Right down the bottom there, you do have audio settings. Now, in order to enable the best sounding sound quality out of the 3.5mm jack, I found that if you turn on the HD sound audio, that reduces the noise, and it does seem to improve things a little bit. Now, if you do happen to have a Mi headset, which I've got one right here, then you can also tweak things. It actually works just for any other headset as well. So you can turn on the Mi Sound Enhancer, and if you happen to have one of their, for example, I've got the Mi In-Ear Pros right here. Those are those ones. Then it will tweak the sound further just for that headset, and it works in everything. So even in YouTube, and then listening to your high quality encoded MP3s and your FLAC files and things like that, it will affect that as well too. I don't actually really normally use that too much, but you can sign buttons and things, but very good controls and audio settings here. Now gamers out there, you don't have to worry about will it be able to play XYZ game. Yes, it can play everything with smooth, playable frame rates. It's quite a powerful chipset, not the most powerful. And I have noticed that now and then you will see a tiny little stutter with games like Asphalt Extreme here. And that's only really in the most demanding games. It's something I've seen on other Snapdragon 821 devices. I don't know whether it's down to optimization of the ROM, whether it's the game itself, but overall, every single game out, the demanding ones, all the ones I have tested, have very smooth frame rates and extremely playable. So I've been gaming, I've been playing Asphalt Extreme, some Clash of Clans, Marvel Champions, and now I just have left Mortal Kombat X here running for 10 minutes, but the total gaming time is around 30 minutes. I want to check out the temperatures. So around 28, 30 degrees on it. So it does get warm, like any device. It does warm up after gaming. I found that maybe it could be slightly warmer than the aluminium clad unibody mobiles out there. So let's have a look at the rear of it. 28, around 30 degrees. I mean, thermals are perfectly fine, I find, on the Mi Note 2. Now look at the camera settings. So the typical modes you get with MIUI 8 here, a few options there. Manual mode is probably the most interesting one, so you can go into that and then adjust your camera settings. For example, the ISO, exposure time, focus, and white balance. Now white balance in auto mode, I've noticed that sometimes gets it wrong, and you come out with photos that look a slight blue in color, with more of a blue tint, a cool white to them, instead of the correct white balance there. Now in video mode, you'll see that it crops in quite a bit. Now that's because of the electronic image stabilization. And modes are very limited here. So slow motion, which is 720p, and time lapse. Of course, you've got other settings that you can go and set that to 4K, which is the maximum recording resolution. So let's have a look now at some samples from the front and rear cameras, as well as video and stills in low light too. So here's a sample from the front-facing 8-megapixel autofocus camera that has an aperture of 2.0, just like the rear camera. Now the autofocus on it is hit and miss. Sometimes it works really well, and other times I've noticed that I have been blurred out because it's been focusing on the background, or it just struggles to get lock. Another thing too is the audio bit rate is only 95 kilobytes per second, which is rather poor, and it does at least shoot in 1080p. I've also noticed that in low lighting conditions that the frame rate will drop down below 30 frames per second. So this is shot 4K with the continue autofocus enabled. Now as mentioned, it does support electronic image stabilization in 4K, which is something we haven't seen before. Now personally, I would prefer to have optical image stabilization as well on a flagship, but you see now that when I walk, it does a reasonably good job to take the shake out. And autofocus tends to work reasonably well, but I have noticed that it doesn't like focusing up really close. So macro video, even photos, you have to hold the camera back a little. Now, to quickly recap, the performance of it is really good. I mean, it's fast thanks to that Snapdragon 821 processor, ample RAM and UFS 2.0 storage, which is almost as fast as a SATA 3 drive. Now, the battery life is also really good. The build quality, nice and solid. The edges where the glass and metal meet is pretty much flawless. This is a premium device and it feels like a premium device. But what I feel isn't premium is the screen. It's a bit of a letdown. It's not as sharp as other 1080p panels, as I explained in the beginning when looking at the screen. I do find the maximum brightness of 540 lumens of brightness that I measured just doesn't really seem enough in bright lighting conditions. For example, outdoors, I noticed that you can still make out what is on the screen, but I just wish it was a little bit brighter, a couple of notches more. Now, the camera performance is really quite good. Sharp images, very detailed images. Sometimes the auto white balance gets it wrong and the images come out a little bit with a blue tinge to them. And the front-facing 8 megapixel camera, when the focus is working properly, does a good job, but I did find that sometimes it's hit and miss. The other thing is the audio quality on video, both 4K, 1080p, front and rear, is only 95 kilobytes per second, which is really way too low. Xiaomi, this is 2016, and you're using a bit rate from something like 2009. So really, they need to focus on improving their audio and video. And if they put a better screen in this model, it would really be a top Chinese flagship phone. Thank you so much for watching this review here, and if you haven't already, why not think about subscribing? I'm going to have plenty more up and coming, like the Xiaomi Mi Mix as well, so keep an eye out for that in future updates.